Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivadacharya His Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivadacharya Ashtotara Shatashisha Maharaj Vangai Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nandakoti Vaishya Vrinda Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Jai Shri Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so this morning we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, entitled Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter 21, Instructions by Maharaj Prithu, and we're on text 31. So that is 421 31. 421:31. Okay. So this is what's the meter? Well, what's the meter for the verse? Okay. Yat pada seva viruchista pasvinam ashesha janmo pachitam alam diya sadya chinot yanvaham edati sati Yatha padangushtavan histra hurishta sarit. Yat pada seva viruchistapasvinam Ashesha janma pachitam malam diyaha Sadya chinodyanvaham ejati sati Yata padangushta vinistras sarit. Please chant. Okay. Yat pada, whose lotus feet? Seva, service. Viruchihi, inclination. Tapasvinam, persons undergoing severe penances. Ashesha, innumerable. Janma, birth. Upachitam, acquire. Malam, dirtiness. Diyaha, mind. Sadyaha, immediately. Chinoti, destroys. Anvaham, day after day. Edati, increasing. Sati, being. Yata, as. Pada angushta, the toes of his lotus feet. Vinihrishta, Vinishrita, emanating from. Sarit, Sarit, water. Translation. By inclination to serve the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, suffering humanity can immediately cleanse the dirt which has accumulated in their minds during innumerable births. Like the Ganges water which emanates from the toes of the lotus feet of the Lord, such a process immediately cleanses the mind, and thus spiritual or Krishna consciousness gradually increases. Purport. In India, one can actually see that a person who takes a bath in the Ganges water daily is almost free from all kinds of diseases. A very respectable Brahmin in Kolkata never took a doctor's medicine. Even though he sometimes felt sick, he would not accept medicine from the physician, but would simply drink Ganges water. And he was always cured within a very short time. The glories of the Ganges water are known to Indians and to ourselves also. The river Ganges flows from Kolkata. Sometimes within the water there are many stools and other dirty things, which are washed away from neighboring mills and factories. But still, thousands of men take baths in the Ganges water, and they are very healthy as well as spiritually inclined. That is the effect of Ganges water. The Ganges is glorified because it emanates from the toes of the lotus feet of the Lord. Similarly, if one takes to the service of the lotus feet of the Lord or takes to Krishna consciousness, he's immediately cleansed of the many dirty things which have accumulated in his innumerable births. We have seen that in spite of the very black record of their past lives, persons who take to Krishna consciousness become perfectly cleansed of all dirty things and make spiritual progress very swiftly. Therefore, Prithu Maharaj advises that without the benediction of the Supreme Lord, one cannot make advancement either in so-called morality, economic development, or sense gratification. One should therefore take to the service of the Lord or Krishna consciousness and thus very soon become a perfect man, or in some case, woman. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Chipram bhaviti dharma ma shashvat chantim nagachati. Being a respectable king, Prithu Maharaj recommends that everyone take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus be immediately purified. Lord Sri Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita that simply by surrendering unto him, one is immediately relieved of all sinful reactions. As Krishna takes away all the sinful reactions of a person immediately upon his surrender unto him, similarly the external manifestation of Krishna, the representative of Krishna, who acts as the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, takes all the resultant actions of the sinful life of the disciple immediately after the disciple's initiation. Thus, if the disciple follows the principles instructed by the spiritual master, he remains purified and is not contaminated by the material infection. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore stated that the spiritual master who plays the part of Krishna's representative has to consume all the sinful reactions of his disciple. Sometimes a spiritual master takes the risk of being overwhelmed by the sinful reactions of the disciples and undergoes a sort of tribulation due to their acceptance. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore advised that one not accept many disciples. Om Eganitipadam Dasya Garanjana Shlakaya Chukshuvanmaditam Nena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha Mukam Kaditavachalam Pangam Langayate Gidim Yakpatamaham Vande Shri Gurun Dinitadanam Vancha Kapadrivishta Kripa Sandhu Bevicha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Nikon, do you think you could get a Bhagavad Gita, please? Here's a translation again. By the inclination to serve the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, suffering humanity can immediately cleanse the dirt which is accumulated in their minds during innumerable births. Like the Ganges water which emanates from the toes of the lotus feet of the Lord, such a process immediately cleanses the mind, and thus spiritual or Krishna consciousness gradually increases. Thank you, sir. Thank you, good sir. Hmm. Hmm. 9:30 is Abhijit Sarvachaya Sarvadamram Prityaja. That's 18. No. Okay. So Prabhupada, he is, first of all, the verse is saying that by inclination to serve Krishna, the lotus feet of Krishna, suffering humanity can immediately be cleansed. They can immediately cleanse the dirt which is accumulated in their minds and during innumerable births. So sometimes people, they wonder why they're suffering, or they wonder why there's so much suffering in the world. And the reason is because you could say people are in an unnatural state. In other words, they're in a diseased state, so therefore they have to suffer. And so much suffering actually just comes from people's hearts being dirty, or people's, you could say, their minds become being dirty. So in other words, they have so many material desires, which by engaging those material desires, one suffers. And there's no way around that. If one has material desires, and if one acts on those material desires, then they have to suffer. And just the body itself is proof that we've had material desires in the past, because material body means material desires. Means that we've had material desires. Like, for example, we could think of it like this, that okay, the soul's eternal. We have so many bodies within this material world. You know, the soul's going to different bodies. Transmigration of the soul. Dehinosmin nita dehe, komaram yovanam jara. That the soul's transmigrating. Reincarnation. So why is it that the soul keeps on coming back and taking another material body? It is only due to material desires alone. That's it. Unless some people want to stay back and, take another material body so they could preach or something. But aside from that, it's just material desires. So it means that either we in our last life, we decided we want to stay and engage in the Sankirtan movement, preach, or we had some material desires. So the idea is that we want to free ourselves of those material desires because they're unnatural, and Krishna doesn't want us to suffer. Even if you look at it as that, oh well, isn't that selfish to not want to suffer? Well, yeah, you could say it is, but we could also not want to suffer because Krishna doesn't want us to suffer. In other words, we could be reinstated in our true natural position as eternal servant of Krishna because Krishna wants us to, for the pleasure of Krishna. So by having a dirty mind or dirty consciousness, then one must suffer. And Srila Prabhupada gives an example in the Nectar of Devotion. He says that a man may be suffering from some disease, which he obtained by engaging in sex life. And that disease is causing him a lot of suffering. Now I forgot the disease, and we don't have to get into all the nastiness of the diseases, but he's suffering on account of that. But because the desire within his heart has not left, because he still has desires for sexual activity, he's forced to engage in sex life again, although that caused his suffering in the first place. And by engaging in it, it may cause him more suffering. But whatever, so anyways, he gives that example. Anyway, so this is the power of lust. And there's so many cases like that where people, they something causes them to suffer. Like, yeah, like this example probably gives. The desire didn't leave, so he has to engage more and cause more suffering. Now, but people, they engage in activities that cause them suffering, but they're not able to stop. Because at first it was pleasurable, but then over time it just became an addiction, which led to pain. But they can't stop because their mind is so strong. So in other words, they have material desires, or you could say, dirt within their heart that forces them to do that. So whether it's heroin or this drug or that drug, it's clearly not producing the same type of so-called good results, but they're forced to do it. So that is, you could say, the situation of the world, that due to people having uncontrolled senses, they get themselves into trouble. In other words, they suffer. Like so many people go to prison. Why? Because they just couldn't control their senses. They do something foolish, and they have to suffer. And if you look at that individually, collectively, within the family structure, there's so many cases in which an individual is unable to control their senses, or a group of persons are unable to control their senses, and it causes a lot of trouble. So therefore, the idea is that if we cleanse the heart, if we develop the inclination to serve Krishna, that in and of itself is a symptom of having a clean heart. But also just by engaging in the service of Krishna, that will help cleanse our heart more and more and more. And then once we have a clean heart, or a somewhat clean heart, we won't be in the, you could say, category of living entities that are just helpless. You could say helplessly following their material desires all over the universe, which is producing a lot of suffering. So therefore it's important, Cheto Darpana Marjanam Bhava Mahadavagni Nirvarpanam, that we cleanse our hearts. And the fact is, the fact is, if we want Krishna to reside within our heart, which of course Krishna is already there, but say he's there in the form of super soul, which is an interesting phenomenon actually. Oh yeah. So what would I say in this case? Super soul. It's an interesting phenomena or phenomenon. Yeah. That's what I thought. I didn't even know the word phenomena. I always use phenomenon. So. Oh yeah. It's an interesting phenomenon, the super soul, because the super soul is only in the material world with the conditioned souls. But once the world implodes or explodes, where's the super soul go? I guess it gets out of here. Huh? But we want not just a super soul, you could say. We don't got a problem with the super soul, of course. But we want, right, Shamasundar, Krishna, threefold bending form residing within our heart. So in other words, we have to make our heart so clean that Krishna won't want to leave our heart. Krishna will want to reside there. Not that Krishna's thinking, oh wow, that heart is so dirty. I don't want to be there. I don't want anything to do with that heart. Get me far away from that heart. It's just because Krishna's a person after all, and he has certain things or qualities he's attracted to, and one is purity of heart or purity of intention. So we can't force Krishna to just, right, enter our hearts and stay there, but we have to prepare properly, the temple, cleanse the temple. And therefore we have this whole pastime, right, in Lord Chaitanya's Gundicha Marjan, cleansing of the Gundicha temple, getting the temple ready for Lord Jagannath to come. It wasn't just like, oh, well, we haven't cleaned this temple in a year, but anyways, we'll come invite Lord Jagannath. Jagannath doesn't want to be in such a temple. And it doesn't show much for the pujaris or priests. I mean, what kind of pujaris and priests is that, right? Are those? So, Jagannath comes from his main temple in Puri, and he goes down the road there about, I don't know, maybe a mile or two, something like that. And then he resides in Gundicha, which is representing Vrindavan. So, the temple has to be clean. Similarly, our heart has to be clean in order for Krishna to want to be there. And that will reduce so much suffering in this world. And then we have the Ganges, or the Ganga. So Prabhupada says that there's a man, he quotes that there's a man and he, right, never went to the doctor, but he always bathed in the Ganga and he was very healthy. And there's many cases of like that, and although there's all types of, you could say, impurities within it, materially speaking, dirty things, but Prabhupada's saying, and he has faith, that there's many people who bathe in it regularly and are very healthy. Now, of course, you could say the result of something in many ways depends on the faith of the performer. So some people, they just don't have faith, so therefore they don't get the result, or they get little result. Just like they say sometimes, oh, you could drink Ganga right from the river, provided you have faith, or else you get sick. So, I mean, I just don't want to take the chance, so I just don't drink. But I knew this one devotee, we know this devotee, Bhakti-avatar. Bhakti-avatar is literally drinking from the Ganga, like from the river. He'd get his bottle and fill it up, and in Mayapur. It's quite surprising. Anyways, who could understand, right? But at least we could bathe there. Like when I was in Mayapur recently, I made it a point, okay, I'm here for a short time. Every day I have to bathe in the Ganga. Important purifying effect the Ganga has. But again, excuse me, it's not just these things in and of themselves will produce the result. One has to be following the whole process, you could say, as far as possible. Just like Prabhupada gave an example that every day 10,000 prostitutes bathe within the Ganga, right? But they just go on with their activities in materialistic life. So in other words, bathing in the Ganga is extremely important, and so many other things within Krishna consciousness are important, but we have to be careful not to develop this half-hen logic tendency. You know the half-hen, Glenn? Half-hen logic, you know that, Glenn? You don't know? So it's there's a farmer, and he had a wonderful hen who produced all types of wonderful eggs. Apparently he liked eggs. We don't like eggs, but he liked eggs. So, but he was thinking, oh, well, why do I have to feed this hen so much? But I do want the eggs, because the eggs, you could sell eggs and eat, whatever the guy was saying, eat eggs or whatever. So he's thinking, okay, well, but I don't want to feed the hen, I just want to get the eggs. So let me take care of this. So then he just, cut the head off of the hen. But what happened? Were the eggs still coming? No, because you have to feed the hen to get the eggs, right? So half-hen logic means you take something that you like, or that's easy to do in Krishna consciousness, and then you kind of leave aside the stuff you don't like, and that's not easy to do. Okay, well, like some devotees, there's a saying that, anyways, I don't want to criticize a particular location of the world, but in one location of the world that says that devotees follow 3 regulative principles. You know what that is? 3 regulative principles? No meat, fish, or eggs. That's the 3 principles they follow. Well, it's joking because, you know, the place and what I'm talking about, the location in the world, it's kind of like, I don't want to say kind of like wild or kind of, you know, difficult, you know, atmosphere to follow the principles in. So the idea is that the devotees in that area, they just follow 3 regulative principles: no meat, fish, or eggs. So in other words, all the other, you know, ones they don't follow, you know, 4 regulative principles. Illicit sex, intoxication, gambling, you know. So in other words, but that doesn't really produce the right results, at least the pure results of Krishna consciousness. It doesn't work. So yeah, we have to be careful that we, whether it's this, you know, materialistic people bathe in the Ganga or you know, persons, who, whatever the case is, there's many ways of looking at it, but not just to do something in the name of Krishna consciousness or do some Krishna conscious activity and expect some super high result without following the other important principles of Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is like a whole package. It's a whole, it's a formula. It's not just like a little bit. It's a whole formula, how to live, how to think, how to act, how to carry ourselves within this world in order to get the proper result. So yeah, purification of the heart. So like the Ganges water, which emanates from the toes of the lotus feet, such a process immediately cleanses the mind. So it's cleansing our mind, the process of Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada says that it won't happen immediately, necessarily, although it does happen sometimes immediately, like Katvanga Maharaj. He wanted a benediction, when am I going to die? He wanted to know. I don't know if anybody else would want to know that benediction or have that as a benediction when they're going to die, but he wanted that. So they asked, when am I going to die? And then someone told him, you're going to die in the next few moments. So then he completely surrendered to Krishna, right? Somehow. And then he went back to Godhead after that. So you could say it's like immediate surrender, but generally it takes a little time, and Prabhupada quotes Chipram Bhavati Dharma. So that's the verse after Apichat Sararachayo Bhajate Mama Nanya Bhak, which that is important verse in the Bhagavad Gita about if one commits the most abominable action, if he's engaged in devotional service, he's considered saintly because he's properly situated in his determination. And the next one, Prabhupada says Krishna says he becomes quickly righteous and attains lasting peace. O son of Kunti, declare it boldly that my devotee never perishes. So it's saying that he becomes righteous. In other words, that a devotee striving to become Krishna conscious, striving to go back to the spiritual world, may undergo some difficulties. But due to the nature of the influence of the illusory energy, how strong it is. But by engaging in Krishna consciousness, by chanting Hare Krishna, which is the foundation for our spiritual life, and by engaging in the process of devotional service, one quickly becomes righteous. In other words, one becomes fixed up and not bewildered any longer. And just one or two last things is that this, surrender to Krishna, right? We could take it Sarvadhamma Prityaja. course, there's a lot to speak about in relation to surrender to Krishna. The 6, right, favorable, 6 symptoms of surrender, so on. But it's like a whole topic in itself. But an interesting way to look at it is that Krishna comes in many forms, right? Like Krishna comes in the form of prasad. Means, it's very easy to surrender to that form, right? Krishna. And that's good. We could surrender to prasadam. Better surrender to prasadam than something else. Non-prasadam. But Krishna also comes in the form of his name, holy name. So we could say that we should surrender to Krishna in the form of his holy name. Means to engage in the process of Harinam, Sankirtan, chanting, dancing, and also to japa, chanting, congregationally and individually. And then the last thing is that the spiritual master, just as Krishna takes away the sins, the spiritual master also does as representative. Takes away the sins of the disciple, or the sinful reactions. And that's the understanding. And also the understanding is that one has to be careful after becoming a disciple to not engage in sinful activities, because the spiritual master can suffer on if the disciples are committing too many sinful activities. And Srila Prabhupada said one time he was in Vrindavan and he was undergoing some sickness, and Srila Prabhupada said, the reason I'm sick, I'm not sure the percentage, I don't know if he said 20, 30, 40, 60, 80, something like that. I know it's a big spectrum, makes a difference, but he said a particular percentage of my disciples, which I remember it being quite large, and he said leaders, disciples, he said are not following, and therefore I'm suffering because of that. So sometimes that's the risk the spiritual master takes, but also the disciples should be kind to the spiritual master and not engage in sinful. But so that's there. And not to accept too many disciples. So for those of you who will be gurus in the future, don't accept too many disciples. But what does too many mean? Not accept many disciples. What's the definition of many? I don't know. 10, 20, 500, 1,000. What's too many? But in the Nectar Devotion, Prabhupada talks about this, the idea of not accepting too many disciples, and he says that one is that you don't want to accept unqualified disciples because, you may have to suffer for that, their sinful reactions. But he says, and also you don't want to do it for mundane purposes, or you get some disciples for whatever, profit and whatever it may be, some type of material purposes. But then he says that for the spreading of Krishna consciousness, a guru takes the risk and accepts many disciples, even though they may not be qualified. But for the risk of spreading Krishna consciousness, a disciple may do that. Guru may do that. So therefore, I could say it's a tricky thing, but in essence it's saying that for the wrong purposes one shouldn't accept disciples, material purposes, which is, you could say, given, but then again, on the other hand, one may do that for Krishna's pleasure, accept many disciples. So, all right. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Yeah. You mentioned Katvanga.
Yes. Is it Katvanga?
Katvanga, the one who got his notice that he was going to...
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, yes, Prabhupada said he only had one moment more. And the word is muhurtam, for a second. Now...
Just a second, huh?
Huh?
A second, huh?
A moment.
Oh, wow.
A second, second. Like 1/60th of a minute. But then what happens here? I'm looking up the actual pastime. It's in the 9th canto, 9th chapter, text 42. And he was fighting with the demons. He won victory. The demigods, being very pleased, gave him a benediction, as you mentioned. And the benediction was, when will I die? And he said, only have one muhurta. So what did he do? Thus he immediately left his palace and went to his own residence, where he engaged his mind fully on the lotus feet of the Lord. And now it quotes from him. He thought, not even my life is dearer to me than the bride. And it goes on and on. And I was never attracted. That's more than a second's worth.
Maybe there's a muhurta in the demigod time.
Muhurta is 48 minutes.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was thinking, yeah.
I mean, muhurta can mean a second, but in this case, I think, the moment is a long moment.
A long moment.
Because, it describes right in the Bhagavatam, he goes to his palace, and he thinks about it, he's doing all this stuff, and now I'm giving him
I wonder why Prabhupada would use moment. It's still, even if you look at it like, there's like a moment like, hey, Glenn, where you got the opportunity to surrender now, just surrender, and then you can go back to God or something. But even 48 minutes, it's still pretty impressive, that you're able to get it together in 48 minutes.
Yeah, you get some time. It's like the old thing with the Cuban Missile Crisis. I don't know if none of you were alive at that time. But the whole thing was, we knew they had these intercontinental ballistic missiles where, they're intercontinental missiles. They get over here in like 20 minutes or something, All right, we got 20 minutes. But if they're off in Cuba, you've only got 5 minutes or 6 minutes, or less, you know what I mean? Before the bombs start falling.
Fast.
Faster, because it's much closer. It's only 90 miles off the shore of Miami, whereas intercontinental means they're situated in Siberia somewhere, and they have to go all the way across but they're going fast, so it takes 20 minutes. But that difference made everyone freak out, and the physical difference, looking on the map, they're right there, they're all the way in Russia, all the way in the other side. It's illusion, basically. But in this case, it seems like it would give you a little chance to gather your thoughts, chant a few rounds. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Anyway, I'm just saying, I'm doing this research.
Yeah.
I'm going to change it or anything. But I think when you tell the pastime, it may be good advice. Hare Krishna.
You have something to go on?
I'm not sure if you've heard this before, and from the lecture that I remember, I don't remember it being it was kind of like an obscure source, like one of the Puranas or something like that. But I heard in a lecture that if the disciple offers the benefits, or the spiritual results, of his devotional service to his spiritual master, he gains 1,000 times the advancement. But also I was thinking that, I don't know if you've heard that.
The disciple gains 1,000 times advancement?
Yeah, if they offer it to their spiritual master.
Yeah, I've never heard that, but, it does, because you could say, the spiritual master, he suffers on account of
that's what I was thinking.
Reactions of the disciples.
So then could you also
you
make
could say
an
that from a logical point of view, at least. Of course, we don't get too much of speculation or something. But logical point of view is that wouldn't the spiritual master benefit from the disciples?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Because they're connected.
Credit.
You're linked to the spiritual master. So that's something I was thinking. I heard that, and I was thinking, well, he could suffer, but he also could make advancement if the disciples are following properly.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. All right. Akadashi ki jai. Prabhupada said, extra hearing and chanting, meditating on the pastimes of Govinda, right? Hearing the names and pastimes of Govinda, increasing the remembrance. Akadashi ki jai.